FBI investigators often tackle some of the scariest crimes that have been perpetrated against the American public. Other crimes may look relatively innocent, but have more sinister connections, including to organized crime. Many of these crimes can only be solved with the help from the public. Number 5. In 2020, the FBI announced it would be reopening the cold case crime against Mary Sparks that has remained unsolved since 1975. More than 45 years after someone took the life of the young University of New Mexico graduate, her family is still looking for answers. Mary, who usually went by the nickname of Molly, was 21 years old in 1975. She had recently graduated from university and was looking forward to starting her adult life. She had plans to travel to Europe and visit old friends. But on July 23, 1975, it was friends a little closer to home that she was looking forward to meeting up with. According to her FBI file, Molly was a member of a women's rugby team, and that evening had plans to go to a local bar and meet up with some teammates. The bar in question was Rosa's Cantina in Algodones, which was frequented by students, young professionals, and the Bandidos motorcycle group. On the night in question, it was quarter tequila shots night, and the local band was playing. It would have been busy due to the cheap drinks, though Molly herself wasn't a big drinker. She borrowed her father's white over blue Gran Torino to make the trip. If she gave her family the names of any friends that she was planning to meet up with, that information wasn't made public. Nothing about what happened at the bar has been made public either. It's believed she was at the bar between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. Some of the other members of her rugby team confirmed that they had been at Rosa's Cantina that night, but none of them saw anything unusual. At some point, Molly left, but she would never make it home. When she didn't return home that night, her parents grew concerned. Her father went out to look for her the following morning. His car remained in the parking lot where Molly had left it, but there was no sign of his daughter. Molly wouldn't remain missing for long. Later that day, her body was discovered in a drainage ditch not too far from the bar. She had suffered wounds from a blunt object and was no longer alive. Wet weather meant that police weren't able to collect much evidence from the scene of the crime. There were no footprints. The investigation itself wasn't very good at first, and the paper file went missing at one point. Then the case went cold. There have been few leads over the years. The FBI launched an appeal for information, and they believe the people responsible may still be in the community, and hope that as time has passed and new technology has developed, they might finally be able to crack the case. Number 4. One of the many types of crime the FBI investigates is art theft. Some of these crimes are infamous around the world, and it's believed many art thefts are connected to organized crime. In 2016, a small museum in Springfield, Missouri, found themselves the victims of one of these crimes. The museum had been open for about an hour when staff realized that a series of pieces of art were missing. In 1985, a series of Andy Warhol prints had been donated to the Springfield Art Museum. They weren't the original paintings made by the famous artist, but they were still valuable, at about $30,000 each. The collection of 10 prints were hung in the Spratlan Gallery at the time of the crime. One of the security guards on the morning of April 7th noticed that 7 of the 10 prints were missing from the gallery. He assumed that they'd been taken down for some official reason. Not long after, another guard noticed something strange about one of the doors that led to the courtyard. Tree mulch had been wedged into the lock, which would have enabled someone to open the door from the outside, even if it seemed secure from the inside. At around 10 a.m. that day, the gallery staff realized the paintings hadn't been moved into storage. They were stolen. The gallery was cleared, but it already had visitors going in and out, and it was likely some of the evidence had been contaminated. Security cameras had picked up at least one individual sneaking into the museum at around 12:20 in the morning. It was so dark that investigators were unable to determine whether the crime was committed by one or multiple people. Whoever it was, they'd climbed over a gate that led from the street to the courtyard, then went through the door that had been tampered with and straight to the Spratlan Gallery for the Warhol prints. In a matter of minutes, they had taken 7 of the 10 prints and left the rest. Investigators were able to take some latent prints from the scene of the crime, as the mulch from the door and an exit sign had been used to prop open the door. So far, there have been no suspects identified. Some sources report a few strange events happening shortly before the crime, like a contractor losing his access key, only to find it under a dumpster almost as soon as museum staff questioned him on the missing key. However, it's not known whether the FBI and police believe it was an inside job or not. There is a reward of $25,000 for information leading to the recovery of the art, and the FBI's Springfield office can be contacted directly at 417-882-3303. Number 3. More than 37 years after an unidentified individual attacked Virginia State Trooper Johnny Bowman, his FBI file remains unsolved. It's a case with far more questions than answers, and little progress has been made public since the 1980s. It was a warm August night when Johnny was attacked. He was home with his family, including his young daughter, brother, and sister-in-law. At around 4:30 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Johnny went to answer, and as soon as the door opened, the visitor attacked Johnny with a bladed weapon. He was struck more than 40 times. Johnny was unarmed but tried to fight back. After the surprising attack, the criminal fled, leaving behind sunglasses, a wig, and a hard hat that they had used as a disguise. The attack was over almost as soon as it had began, but Johnny wouldn't survive. All these years later, it remained the only unsolved case of a Virginia State Trooper having his life taken. Even though Johnny was off duty at the time, the crime was considered a line-of-duty attack, leading to the FBI getting involved. Given the ferocity of the attack, it seemed likely it was a deeply personal crime. Someone knew Johnny well and didn't want him alive. As he was a state trooper, it would make some sense if the criminal had been someone who had wound up in jail due to Johnny, or a relative of someone who had already fallen foul of the law. But the only suspect ever named in the case wasn't a convicted felon. It was another police officer. Perry Worrell was a close friend of Johnny's and another state trooper. He was placed on unpaid leave shortly after the crime, and would later suffer a car accident that left him severely incapacitated. Worrell, through his lawyer, said that he had nothing to do with the crime and had no motive for taking Johnny's life. Why Worrell was a suspect has never been revealed. If the criminal was a close friend of Johnny's, it would explain why he answered the door so late at night without a weapon. His daughter, who has since joined the police force, claimed that it would have been very out of character for him, but the wig and hard hat indicate the criminal was trying to hide their identity. If he had seen someone dressed in such a strange manner so late at night, it's strange that he would have been unarmed. Worrell was never charged with any crime, and today it remains unsolved. The FBI has a reward for up to $50,000 for information that leads to the crime being solved. Information can be passed on to the FBI at 1-800-225-5324 and the Virginia State Police at 703-803-2676. Number 2. On October 14, 1986, Rey Elena Tordalat said goodbye to her baby daughter for the last time. After going to a birthday party with a group of friends, she vanished into thin air. 6 months later, Rey's body was found by beaver trappers. What happened to her and who is responsible remains a mystery. Rey was a young Native American woman, and according to friends and family, she took great pride in Native traditions and was a talented dancer. She had learned skills from her own great-grandmother that she hoped to pass on to her daughter when she was old enough. On that fateful day when Rey vanished, she went with 5 friends to a party near her home. Around midnight, she said she wanted to go home, and someone gave her a lift. They drove to Rey's home, but then she didn't want to get out of the car. They drove around the area for a while before returning to the party. According to some reports, nobody saw when Rey left the party again. However, the FBI claims that she was last seen in a vehicle with 2 other individuals near the Tomo Overlook. When Rey didn't return home, her family knew something was wrong and contacted police the next day. At first, her disappearance wasn't taken too seriously. It was thought she was out partying somewhere and would be back in a few days. Search parties were made up mostly of volunteers without any training in forensics. It wasn't clear what would happen if Rey was actually found. 6 months later, Rey's body was found. How Rey passed away wasn't made public, but police believe someone had taken her life. The FBI became involved with the case and worked with local law enforcement to try to get to the bottom of who had taken Rey's life. At one point, law enforcement claimed that they had a suspect, but not enough evidence for an arrest. Since then, a few leads have come in and they were followed up on, but none led the FBI agents any closer to finding out what happened to Rey. A new push for information came with a $20,000 reward in 2019. It was hoped that someone who knew answers would come forward now that so much time has passed. But since 2019, there have been no updates and the case remains unsolved. Number 1. The disappearance of Danielle Imbo and Richard Patron may be one of the strangest unsolved FBI files. The couple went missing along with Richard's car in 2005. Usually, in such circumstances, the possibility that an accident was had and the couple are submerged in a body of water is the most likely scenario. But FBI investigators believe something more sinister may have happened. Danielle and Richard had been childhood friends and dated briefly in high school before going their separate ways. They both had other relationships, children, and Danielle married a man named Joe Imbo. Danielle and Joe had a son together, little Joe, but the relationship fell apart not long after the child was born. The two separated and Danielle intended to get a divorce. After Danielle ended the relationship with Joe, she and Richard began dating again. It was an on-again, off-again relationship, and Danielle had actually ended it not long before they disappeared. But on February 19, 2005, they decided to go out again. Another couple joined them for drinks at a Tex-Mex restaurant called Abilene's in South Philadelphia. The other couple noted that they were kissing throughout the night. When they left at about 11:45 p.m., they did so together. Richard was going to drop Danielle off at her home in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, before going home himself. As they left the restaurant, it was the last time either would ever be seen. Danielle's family raised the alarm the following day. She wasn't at home when her estranged husband dropped off their son. The family got in touch with Richard's family and local law enforcement, and the search for the couple began. No trace of the couple was ever found, though. Danielle's brother paid to take a trip in a helicopter to review the path they had taken from the air, but there was no trace of Richard's black Dodge Dakota truck. Search and rescue teams went into the waterways the couple may have passed near to see if an accident had happened. They found no signs that an accident had occurred. Some law enforcement officers speculated that the disappearance was too clean, and suggested that someone else may have been involved. It was suggested that their disappearance may have been planned and carried out by professional criminals. Attention turned to Danielle's husband, who has sent threatening messages to Richard in the past. But he had an alibi for the night of the disappearance, and he has cooperated with police. Everything from Richard being in gambling debt to connections with a gang that distributed prescription medications have been put forward as possible motives for the crime. Recently, the search group Adventures with Purpose took on the case and searched a portion of the Delaware River after a tip from a viewer, but they didn't find the couple. The case remains unsolved. There is a $15,000 reward for information. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.